then the next iteration will be adding support for staking if your account does not have a lockup. So that's the main focus for the wallet. Another really important P1 is going to be withdrawing from lockup accounts for all of the users in that first tier that have instant liquidity once the vote passes. So you need to have that as well, and that'll be like coupled with being able to basically like send NEAR from your wallet to an exchange. So effectively from your lockup via the wallet to an exchange. So those are the most critical issues on the wallet side for this week.
One thing I want to emphasize too for the wallet team is that last week we had an outage on not being able to log in using your passphrase on mainnet testnet. I want to emphasize that we do more testing and have a culture of test overall inside of everything that we do with the wallet. Is going to be really important going forward. We maintain stability there. So let's make sure. Okay, is Peter out today? I want to make sure I can't see everybody. I'm having unstable internet connection too. Please tell me if people can't hear me. All right, for ecosystem, Peter, I can't see a link. Sorry, my screen just went totally blank.
Peter is out today.
Okay. All right, mainnet guild, Alex.
I'll defer to Max to give an update.
All right, I have a presentation. All right, so let me start. Anyway, it doesn't need to start. We went through our first cycle on the mainnet guild. We're trying to introduce bi-weekly cycles, for those of you who don't know, so that every 2 weeks we decide what we're going to work on the next 2 weeks. And we try to fix the scope and make it more or less frozen as much as possible so that it helps our planning. And also that is very important for the perf review that is going to come in the future. So that once we're actually going to be evaluating the performance of individual people. This is our progress after 2 weeks in the cycle. We had 13 people participated. 2 of these people were actually out of office for the duration of the entire cycle. And there were more people taking vacations. So in total, our capacity was about 100 story points as a team, when adjusted for vacations. However, we had about 140 points estimated, which means we overestimated over our capacity. And we completed 87 of them, which is like 62% of them completed, which is obviously not ideal because we want to finish all of the story points by the end of the cycle, but I think it's pretty good for our first iteration since everyone is still familiarizing with this whole thing. And there are also issues related to this being the first cycle that I'm going to discuss now. But overall, you can see that we can make this process work. I'm really grateful for everyone who has actually been following it diligently, assigning estimates to themselves and trying to split issues into smaller issues. Also very grateful, Bowen, for helping with the chain team to actually make sure that there are work items for the next cycle. So what issues did we encounter with this process? So the first issue was that we adjusted the scope in the middle of the cycle. And that was that basically was an ask from Ilya to prioritize bridge and EVM. So in the middle of the cycle, Marcelo and Vlad were asked to deprioritize what they're working on, or like wrap it up, and start working on the bridge, which obviously affected the completeness of the cycle because they stopped working on whatever they were working on and switched to another work item. Then Bogdan was also asked to urgently help Bowen with some non-public stuff that was really important for critical partners. And he was still working on the Explorer, on the indexer, but he had to do something different in there. The other suboptimal things that happened is that Evgeny Kapun was blocked for more than 10 days, and he still is on merging bridge code. He had code ready, but it was very difficult to actually merge it because our process of engineering contribution to the bridge is not standardized. It's all wanky, and Evgeny had to ask like multiple people, like what packages to publish, how to write it on CI. We had one CI for all 5 repos of the bridge, which is actually very difficult to work with. We're trying to fix it right now. So this is very suboptimal, and it affected the stats of the cycle and Evgeny's individual stats there. And Willem was also stuck in some miscommunication about the on-disk cache implementation for our contracts compilation, where we first agreed on a singleton, and then Misha later came in and said that singleton is not ideal, and he had reasonable arguments why it wasn't ideal, but there was an overlap of work where 2 pull requests were produced simultaneously addressing the same issue. The other process issues were that we obviously overestimated our capacity by 40 points. We estimated at 140, but we actually were capable to do 100 points. And we actually completed 87 out of 100. So we almost hit our capacity in the cycle. But it also means that we tend to overestimate our ability to deliver. And about 9 points, as I looked through all the issues, came from the bugs that kind of were either unanticipated at some point, or they were just like hot fixes. So we have some scope creep because things are just breaking on us. So one security advisory that Misha is working on got its scope expanded, meaning it was one thing, and then Misha dug into deeper, and it turned out to be a much wider scope. And that's pretty much it. The overall theme here is that we have 2 issues with issues that you're gonna see on the next slide. And one of them is that we have spillover issues between the cycles. And in this case, because it was the first cycle, we had spillover issues coming before we started the cycle. So what would happen is that as people would work on a cycle, they would take the issue from that they were working before, let's say for 2 weeks, that had like an estimate, I don't know, let's say 13 story points. And then they would say, I completed this cycle, which it messes with the data because they didn't actually do 13 days worth of work during this cycle, and they just like completed the issue that was running already for a long time. How to fix it? You need to split the issues. So if you try to cross the boundary with some issue, boundary of the cycle with some issue, you write a summary at the end of the issue saying what you did, you close it, and you open the new issue describing what you're going to work on next in the next cycle. So that's the problem of us not splitting issue and issues and carrying them over the boundaries of the cycles. And some of the issues were particularly large. And the large issues, they have a risk, again, to be carried over to the next cycle or being not 100% complete. Some of the issues that are still open are like 80% complete or 90% complete, but we haven't closed them. And so they're just hanging there open. So that shows that it is really important to split issues so that we can actually have a proper account, and people will be able to take credit for the work they've done, even if they did only 80% of some issue. So that's a huge incentive for everyone to actually make sure they split large issues. The other thing that we discussed with Bowen is that some of the issues that we had in this cycle were actually like maintenance or communication with some of the partners or communities. And for that, we have created tracking issues. Like we would say, this person is going to spend 2 days on helping Rosetta people iterate on their design. And this is obviously something that you should be able to take credit for. This costs their time, and they have to prioritize it together with engineering tasks. And so we would create the GitHub issues right in the Near core repository for that. That created some confusion, and we decided that we're probably going to have a private repository just for maintenance, communication, and like those kind of issues, which we're going to link from the ZenHub, bundle it together, which might also allow us to have private issues. Like if you have some maintenance work that you doing with some partner that is not public yet, you will be able to have it there in this repository. That was Bowen's idea. I think it's great. We can try it. So overall, here's the breakdown by person who did what and how much. So you see, it's all very different. Please take into account some people went for vacation, some people had transitioned mid-cycle to a different activity, like working on a bridge. You can see that we have, in some cases, the issues are still open. They were not closed at all. And this is because, again, as I said, we're not splitting issues, or people might actually have forgotten in some cases to close them. Maybe they have actually completed it. But in most cases, that's because the issues are actually very large and people have completed them not to the 100%, but to like 90 or 80%, and they haven't been able to close them that cycle. Solution to that, again, is to split issues so that you're going to be able to claim the credit. Because at the end of the year or sometime later next year, we're going to go over each individual's contributions in each milestone, and it's not going to look good if someone hasn't been closing work items for like a month, let's say, or like, yeah. So that's in everyone's interest to make sure we actually split issues into smaller work items and close most of them or some of them in each milestone. This is our next cycle. So far, we have 92 points in it. Again, thanks everyone for putting stuff into there. This time I didn't really coordinate it, so it was really everyone's contribution here to just go into ZenHub and create issues for themselves on their own. We have about 107 points capacity because, again, we have people taking vacations and some people have short vacations, some people have very long vacations in there. So let's get the next cycle done, and please go over it and look if you have some large issues that you would want to split so that you would be able to claim the credit next cycle. Otherwise, it's going to be quite awkward if you have no closed issues by the end of the next cycle. Try splitting them into smaller things. So this is an overview of the previous cycle. Let's go over what has been happening this week in the subteams. And then Bowen maybe can help me with overview of what has been happening in the chain. I can give overview what has been happening outside the chain. So with eBridge, we have, as I said, Marcelo and Vlad onboarding. They're going to be mostly working on safety. Well, this is basically our two focuses: safety and usability. So Marcelo is going to be adding tests to the Rust contracts so that we have a separate CI for each repository. And Vlad Frolov is going to be adding tests for the library because it's not hermetic and it needs improvement. It's not very separate from the CLI right now. Evgeny Kapon, again, is still blocked on this issue. I'm trying to resolve it right now. There were some difficulties with near API.js, and Vlad Grishina pointed out that it's a well-known long-standing bug in there. So now I know how to work it around. We'll be able to hopefully test it myself and merge. Another big thing that happened about the bridge is that we had two incidents. One of them was that we broke the release, and we found it out only 10 days later or something like that, because people actually that were working on the hackathon, they reinstalled the NPM package and they noticed that their stuff was broken. And that happened because we incorrectly bumped semver version. So everyone, please make sure you read what semver is, semantic versioning, and you follow it absolutely rigorously. There should be no doubt when you bump in major, minor, or patch version, which version you should be bumping. So if you're confused and you don't know which one to bump, then please ask around instead of just like making a judgment call there. So yes, that's how the first issue happened. The second issue happened because we incorrectly fixed the first one. So we're trying to fix the first one, but because we had like lots of design complexity in the bridge, we just make a bug. It was like a typo kind of thing. And we again broke the release, so we had to unbreak it again. All right, that's it from the bridge. And transaction runtime.
Do you have a way to like a test that pretty much before publishing, we'll double check that what will be published will work.
Yeah, so you had a good idea how we can actually do it for CI. So we might be able to enforce it. At least we might be able to check for the issues that are related to us making releases that supposed to be non API breaking, but they actually API breaking. So we can probably make a CI like that tests for this. And then, unfortunately, it will tell us only in hindsight, like post factum, that stuff has been broken. But at least we're gonna have a very fast reaction time instead of finding out about it 10 days later. We might actually even go through like something like alpha releases, where when we do minor or major version bump, we go through the alpha release, where we first release like major alpha, then test with it. Yeah, we need to discuss it internally. I would be very interested to hear Vlad's input on it, because he's very experienced with this kind of stuff. And so we'll try to figure something out with this. All right, so transaction runtime, we haven't done much progress there. The things that are currently in the focus are still the runtime fee spec and the fees. We had some work items shared between transaction runtime and contract runtime, which is about the singleton on disk cache for the contract compilation. And we had lengthy discussion there between like 5 or 6 people about what is the best way to implement it. And yeah, so far, I'm personally leaning towards Misha's approach, but we should probably follow up asynchronously in case someone is disagreeing currently. Evgeny had a great idea how to include the disk cost estimation into our fees, which is basically we run this fee tool with RAM disk and with SSD disk and just like diff it. And that's how we're gonna know. Because before we had some very sophisticated ideas, this one can be very straightforward and provide a really good estimate. And we also had a really lengthy discussion with Bowen and with Misha about, okay, not really lengthy, just a discussion, to be honest, about how we include all the costs that comes from the chain into our fees, which is a very open-ended, almost philosophical kind of discussion. So if anyone wants to have this discussion, we can have it asynchronously, we can have a separate research meeting for it. Contract runtime, Nikolai, he's a contract runtime TL. He's out of office for several weeks now. So the progress that has been done there was mostly around this on-disk cache and around the EVM fee costs. So there is some fee shifting happening there with EVM, where Bo noticed that our disk-related operations in EVM are very volatile. They're like 30% volatility, which is very suspicious because in WASM, the volatility is like less than 10%. So we need to investigate this because it might point to some internal bug in our code. We really need to dig into this.
So yeah, I had a quick look. I left a comment. I can follow up offline.
Cool, awesome, thank you. And yeah, we had Willem had a talk on WASM versus EVM on Friday. It went well. It was a bit more than 1 week ago, and he's still working on improving our experience with contract testing, especially cross-contract testing, since even during the hackathon, people were asking how to test our contracts when there is a cross-contract communication, when they issue transactions, and they did point out that we have a lot of boilerplate code in there. So that's a very well-known standing pain point that Willem is addressing right now. So with Node interfaces, again, Vlad was for 1 week out of office, and then for another week, he's fixing some bugs that popped up with Rosetta and with telemetry, which is again kind of a scope creep. We have little bit of scope creep happening because stuff is just breaking under us sometimes. And then he's also switching to the bridge. Boden, on the other hand, he's improving our indexer, but Bowen asked him to also make some changes that were very urgent and were required for one of our critical partners in there. And with EVM, which is the project that Ilya is leading, we didn't do, as far as I know, much progress. It was, some stuff was done on the fee side, we clarified a lot in terms of the meta transactions. And Alex Shevchenko wrote, well, I mean, he wrote a document about the breach, but I think it's what is going to be happening, especially around the meta transactions, since the effort of the breach and EVM is going to be overlapping heavily at some point, maybe very soon. So that's it. You want to add something about the EVM?
Yeah, so there's a checklist in NAPS now for launching EVM, like which includes not just near core, but also CLI, API.js, Web3 provider, Explorer, and docs, even a repo in Ethereum. So it's pretty critical that for this like to really launch, right, we'll need kind of a like a vertical support for all the tooling. And so we'll need to figure out how to add this into some of this kind of tooling like milestones as well, pretty much going forward. And yeah, I mean, Bridge will be one of the definitely important pieces as well to work together. So I'm like trying to collect the requirements there. So let's have a list there, which also includes links to specific issues. So we know exactly kind of the work scope and how it's done. And then we can manage it from there. It's in, in NAPS and issues EVM checklist.
Yeah. All right. So do the same for the bridge. Cool. Well, Bowen, do you want to give an update on the chain?
Sure. Yeah. So last week, well, I guess there are multiple efforts going on in the past week. I think Marcelo, before he left to working on Bridge, he fixed some tests, fixed several issues with the network, especially after our exchange was syncing from archival peers. And then also he implemented this feature that allows archival nodes to anchor its archival peers so that it doesn't lose the archival peers that it needs to sync from if it's syncing, for example. And also there's Piotr working on this this very long ongoing effort to track down all the memory issues. I think we've made great progress here. We've developed an entire system to track all the memory leaks. We can now track the memory allocated by every object, and also we can also track the using JMalloc. I think Piotr override the allocator to allow us to see the exact memory stats of memory allocated by each thread. And basically the discovery there is that we have some massive memory leak in memory allocated outside of Rust code. So basically that means there is some memory leak in one of the dependencies that we use. So something that coming to mind is something like RocksDB or the Wasmer backend or the Reed-Solomon implementation, for example. I mean, so far we have not identified the exact cost here, and that will be a focus for this week and also I guess next week as well. But at least we know right now that's where the majority of the leaks coming from. And at the same time, there's still we still see a relatively small but still a leak from the memory allocated by Rust code as well. So we will also investigate there what happened. So Michael is working on merging his change from this post phase 1 branch where he implemented this feature that allows us to forward chunk parts faster. But the problem he encounters is that we need to add a protocol version to shard chunk header, which at the first we thought is not a very big problem, but when it actually got to implementation, we realized that it's actually much harder than we had anticipated. And I think the solution we chose is to pass a version to add another message to routed message body to add a version there with protocol version so that we can know how to deserialize it when we actually get to shard chunk header. but yeah, that does require that does mean that we need to do a lot more work than we had anticipated. But I think so. At least we figure out like what we need to do there, and I think that should be done by the end of this week. So Alex also made a lot of progress on making stress.py, which is this stress test work. And also along the way, he fixed a number of small issues, or maybe some not so small. Like one of the things that we have been wanting to do is to allow nodes to request chunks from non-validator nodes, and this is actually now kind of required to make the test work, because in case that the node sync, when the node is syncing, doesn't know yet who the validators are, and then at the end of state sync, they need to be able to request chunks in order to proceed. So that's almost fixed. I just need to review the PR and get merged. Yeah, that's and also on my side, I implemented some implemented a feature that allows us to return receipts from the transaction status RPC, and that is for a urgent request from one of the partners, and so far it seems to be working very well. And also on the other hand, the testing of syncing archival nodes seems to be working pretty well as well. So I think, I mean, although it is a bit slow, I think the node has been running for about 2 weeks now, and still it only has synced 67%. Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but at least it has so far. It has not encountered any problems. Yeah, so I guess that's it from the update from chain side.
Cool, thanks. Anyone has any questions? Marcelo? Right. We cannot hear you, Marcelo, in case you're talking. All right, I guess
sorry,
that's it.
wasn't it?
Okay. Got 3 items left here, but in first one of those is I'd like to get an update from Sandy, in particular status update on sort of how we're doing on overall releases, but also really we want to call out that we're doing an infrastructure work group that's been announced on the community calendar, and I'll let Sandy give the details there. This is an effort for us to expose and gain interaction with community on how we're doing all of our things around infrastructure, and specifically a roadmap for NearUp. Sandy, you want to give an update?
Sure. Yeah, I have a few things to update. So like the first main thing is today we had the testnet hard fork that went like a charm. No problems. We only had 2.5 minutes downtime. Mario has built all the automation for it. So essentially we have like now Ansible scripts which stop one machine, run the migration script, upload it to S3, and then just NearUp pulls the binary once we're ready. We have also discussed, we used to have DevNet before, and that was one of the issues. Like we killed it because we didn't see any benefit of it. And currently, like we are building more and more automation, and we were testing it on BetaNet. So we decided to revamp DevNet into something we call CrashNet right now. So we're running a bleeding edge there of NearD, but we also implemented NearUp support for CrashNet, so we can test the NearUp versioning as well, because we figured out we cannot really test NearUp properly with only integration tests. So CrashNet is now running. The good thing about CrashNet is we created a Terraform config for easily spawning up machines. Not me, but Mario. And also we have the Ansible automation for like setting up the machine. That's something we would like to do for the other machines as well. So Nick is going to start looking into creating Terraform configs for RPC and boot nodes, and also like automation. So if we need more RPC nodes, we can spawn them easily. One thing, BetaNet release was postponed for tomorrow because we figured out there's a bug introduced on Friday in Europe, which wouldn't restart the nodes. So we fixed that first, gave 24 hours to the validators on Betanet to upgrade. And then tomorrow we're just gonna release the Betanet release. Everything is ready. We created the GitHub release. We created the binaries. We just wanna give them time to update. Also, we plan to move all the RPC nodes to be archival nodes. And also one thing on that side is also auto scaling. So we seen we had a critical save on Friday, which took us like a few hours to debug. But essentially some user from Guildnet was running a script and essentially DDoSed mainnet. And why it happened? It happened because we only had one RPC per zone. And then the GCP balancer tries to pin all the traffic to that one node. And that was causing problems because that node was down. And then it started redirecting traffic. So what we plan to do is add more than one node, RPC node per region or per zone. And in the future, enable auto scaling. So if we see that our hosts are running out of CPU or like something is wrong, we're just gonna spawn up new machines. We added CI for network indexer. That's something what the team, Vlad and Bogdan asked. So that's running now. Also, we plan to do the hackathon for Rainbow Bridge is finished. So we plan to merge the NearUp v2 branch into master because it would cause issues on Rainbow Bridge because it's still depending on the old one. So Mario created a PR. There's one test which is failing. So we have a meeting with Max today to figure that out and then merge that. Nick did a really good job on rewriting a lot of NearUp stuff and adding tests. And also he revamped the whole documentation. So the new documentation for NearUp 2 should be much better. Also, we, as Damon said, we decided to start an infra work group, which is essentially a weekly meeting after all the meetings we have on Thursday. And we seen community validators are asking in Discord often, and they have feedback and they give us feedback regularly, and we're trying to update that. And they also started cutting issues more and more into NearUp. So we decided having a community weekly meeting should be good. We also created a community weekly update README, so we can update it the same as Max does for the other meetings. That's essentially it. Also, one thing which I wanted to ask people is I seen in development channel, we often have the PRs which should be reviewed. And half of the the PRs, they are stale for months. And then it's very hard to see which PRs are actually should be reviewed. So maybe everybody should look through their PRs and just close the ones which are stale for months. I think that would be good. Or we just kill the bot because there's no sense of having it. Yeah, I think that's all from our side. I don't know if there's anything else, but that's general overview.
Questions for Sandy? Thank you, Sandy.
Is there a TLDR on what's different about NearUp version 2?
So one main problem with NearUp version 1 was it was auto updating on master every time, and then when we pushed something wrong into the master branch, it would automatically break all the nodes. Also, the other thing is the NearUp v1 was spawning Docker containers, and now we have the other way around. The Docker container is running NearUp. Also, we refactored the code. We deleted a lot of a deprecated code which was not being used at all, and we refactored the code in general just to work better. Adding checks, adding other things. We added testing as well. Currently, we have 70% coverage. We didn't have any tests. We have linters, we have styling and all the other things for the CI on NearUp v2. Also, we have other plans for it. Currently, we release it via pip package. So we can do development on master and test things and then just release the pipe package instead of people updating on master, which was suboptimal. Also, we plan to add other features for NearUp in the future. One of them is canaries, ability to now actually CrashNet is the canary right now because it auto updates on master now, the whole network. But we plan to add some more features there, and we are working on an app. What else should be added there? So yeah, it's just making it stable. I think that was the goal for us, to make stable NearUp. So people a lot of people are depending on it and it's breaking often. We just want to provide like a good experience and easier development for everybody on the team who's working on it. So that was the main goal. And then the plans for the future are like add more things into it. One of the things is also systemd support. Currently, we have the Watcher implementation, which tries to restart it, and that seemed like it sucks because if there's a Watcher bug, it doesn't get restarted properly. And like we're essentially re-implementing a supervisor. So what we plan to do is like migrate it to systemd, and also for Mac support, we plan to like add the watch, the systemd of Mac. I always forget what's the name for that, but that's how we plan to manage the node in the future. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
All right, thank you, Sandy. Any other questions for Sandy? All right, I'd like to get an update from Stefano. Do you have anything there?
Sorry.
On StakeX.
Yeah. I'm removing the mute. So the stake in the network is growing. We have now 44% of votes to get to enter phase 2. I suppose that part of the staking is still like blocked by some issues that we found during the weekend. Two-factor authentication with certain applications like Dokia. Also, we still have users who need to use near CLI to stake their tokens. I suppose that we are getting close to enter for the vote to enter phase 2, because despite the efforts of validators and the discussion that is happening, I see that a lot of users' tokens are getting into the validators that already voted yes. So I think that the most important update that I can share with everyone here is that probably phase 2 is getting closer every hour.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Stefano. Any questions for Stefano? Okay, I have a couple of things I want to go over for just overall general engineering. Number one, I'd like to, I know this is mostly internal, but it's going to YouTube and all, but I want to express to everybody that interviews are top priority. So if you get tapped for an interview, please prioritize those over everything else. It's very important that we're able to hire in a timely manner. And one quick shout out for this. I've been working with teams on how to do job descriptions that is meaningful, most meaningful to the teams and people that are going to be working with those peers. One shout out to Chad Strovsky, who diligently worked through a engineering manager job description for his team. In particular, what we're doing is we created, and again, no, this is public, but we created a private repo for this so that we can discuss job descriptions and make sure that everybody in the teams have a chance to participate in the definitions of the roles for to define their peers. So again, if you're in engineering, have an opportunity to look at those JDs. It's really important because hiring defines our culture, and there's going to be a lot of cultural change stuff that we're trying to push into job descriptions. All right, and third, I'd like to again call out that we should be, whenever possible, spend some time on Discord in general and doing just overall support. I spent a lot of time last week in watching how people respond to sort of issues in the wallet. It's really important that we just have people here show up. And so I appreciate anybody who shows up to just answer questions and do your best. And if you can't help someone, just tap somebody else, but being there to answer those questions really helps out, and community will respond very positively to those things. And last, this is the beginning of Q4. Again, this is internal mostly, but if you should be having conversations with your managers about progress on your Q4 goals in every single one-on-one. So I usually spend about half my time working with each of my reports, talking about like how each going through the goals that have been assigned to them, or they picked them themselves, and checking to see how we're doing. So again, officially started Q4 goals are in action, and they're locked down. All right, I think that's all I have for today.
Oh, there's one last thing which I
yes,
forgot.
Sandy.
Yeah, one thing which we plan to do also, like we discussed in the SRE team, that probably currently the NearOps folder is private, and we would like to create a near/ops public folder So we can provide scripts we are using for the community. So like we have a Terraform config, which we build. We can easily make it open sourceable, and then other people can fetch it as well and use it on their services. That's what and there's like the same for us Ansible and some other toolings, which we build inside. It could be reusable outside. So I don't know if anybody has strong opinions on that, and are we fine to start migrating some of the scripts, which can be public to everybody, and like give it that to the community back.
Cool.
Nobody has any opinions?
Great
Okay.
idea.
Go. Okay, sounds good.
And also just to verbalize that there is a, Mike Purvis points out, there is a pound staking channel in Discord that they'll definitely need help this week. So if you can drop in there, please.
I posted quickly, Sandy, I posted quickly a link on the contributions on the challenge 5 for Stake Wars, which is publish a CI/CD script to deploy near core. So some users already built something by themselves.
Yes, I've seen that actually, and I was looking at like what people have built, and I think like we can do the same. Like we are building these things for us, but like 80-70% can be open source if you just like change the code a bit and make it more open sourceable. And yeah, make sure that like there's no password or something stored there. So yeah, but like could be done. And yeah, thank you for doing the challenges. So that's cool.
Okay. Anything else for today? All right, go once, twice. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank
Have
you.
a good week.
Bye.
So.
You too.
Thank you.